Mantazh, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy that we're doing this. Finally.
Yes, likewise. I want to start with a question that really dives into your journey over the last couple of years. And I know that you have completely reinvented your identity, moving from a corporate executive to a brain coach to a PhD researcher. And I really
Mm.
find that absolutely fascinating. I was wondering if you could share with us, what did you discover about yourself on this journey?
That is such a wonderfully deep question and requires a bit of a long answer because the journey didn't begin just 2 years ago. It began probably about 15 years ago, which is when I was diagnosed with lymphoma, which is a kind of blood cancer. And as you can imagine, when such a big life event happens to you, especially when it concerns your health, it definitely shakes you up a bit, gets you to take a pause and reconsider, think about what really matters in life. You don't really have a choice in the matter. It actually just shows up for you. The only choice you have is to understand what's really happening and make the best decisions that you can in that moment. So for me, I think 15 years ago, having had lymphoma was definitely a realization that uh, there is something else that's perhaps meant for me beyond the conditioned way of thinking that my life needs to be, which was, go out there, get an education, a world class education, get a great job, pay the loans for getting that education, move forward, get married, settle down, have kids, the usual stuff that we all think that we want. And look, I wanted those things, so absolutely no doubt about that. But there was a seed somewhere that was planted at the back of my consciousness that said, maybe there's another path for you. And I think that was a seed of thoughts that led to it, grew into a tree eventually 2 years ago, which really made me think, okay, now that I have the opportunity to rethink what's possible, what would I do with my life? What is it that truly gives me meaning? And this is not necessarily about purpose, because I think purpose also changes, it also evolves for people. I have certainly experienced that as I've gone through my 40 odd years of life. But at that point in time, 2 years ago, it meant that, okay, you finally have the space, the time to think about and follow what this inner voice has been telling you for so many years. The other impetus that happened was my mother's journey, which is with Parkinson's, and her brain surgery that happened roughly around the same time, which was really scary. It was a very difficult thing for the entire family to go through, and especially for her to go through. For Parkinson's, there's a specific surgery called deep brain stimulation, which is what she underwent. It's a fascinating surgery which involves putting electrodes into the brain and stimulating that part of the brain that controls the tremors that you feel as a Parkinson's patient. And it did actually help reduce that. But at the same time, because it's the brain, there were so many complications that got compounded because of the surgeries. That is the reason why I'm telling you that, is because I think it made me feel very helpless and made me realize that maybe it's about time again that I listen to that voice and I do what I really, really feel like I've been wanting to do. So that was sort of the second impetus. And then the third, I think, was in these 15 years, the one big realization that has happened for me has been, what do I do to be able to, I know how to control my body in the sense, I go exercise and I go eat the right things, and I've definitely got a much healthier lifestyle now. But what about this? What about what we put in here? What about what the world puts in here? And therefore, what are my management tools that I can use to be able to take what I want and not take what I want? And it was a boot camp during chemotherapy, because I had to really, really be careful about what energy I surround myself with and what thoughts I allow to enter my mind and brew in my mind, and what I need to release. And I definitely think that was a big part of my healing. So I've been on this journey of mindfulness ever since then, and always been very curious as to what the science of it was, what was really happening in my brain, what was really happening in my biochemistry when I'm on this mindfulness journey, even if it's for 5 minutes in the morning, half an hour in the evening, whatever it might be. Because I certainly felt the difference, but couldn't explain it in scientific terms. So I think those three things culminating, the seed telling me to do something different, my mother's journey with her health and Parkinson's, and then my own mindfulness journey, I think all kind of led to this one moment for me. And as cheesy as it sounds, it really was an aha moment for me while I was introspecting and meditating that said, you are meant for a PhD to help people. Go and do a PhD and learn about this deeply, because that is it. Like this is how you establish credibility, trust, and enable yourself to be capable to help people. And so brain coaching came about because I didn't even know what it was, honestly. Like it was just while on my journey, I was searching around, networking, speaking to people, and I came across brain coaching certification, did the certification, absolutely loved it, and then decided I'll do a PhD after that to dive deeper.
Thank you so much for sharing, and I inspired, and also, I mean, I also feel the pain that you must have gone through, all these difficult and challenging moments for
Mm,
yourself, for your mother, that you have shared, and I'm happy that you're doing so much better today, which is
thank
absolutely
you.
amazing that we have this opportunity to talk. When I think about the moment that you shared when you got the cancer diagnostic and on that journey, I was wondering if you could share with us what specific practices and mindsets helped you most to heal.
Look, I'm going to sound like I'm an expert in it, but trust me, 15 years ago, I was not. Yeah. So I just want to say that at the onset, because it is certainly not something I was taught. I was never taught, and I don't think any of us are actually taught any of this in school. The only thing we probably absorb is through our parents and watching our parents, or what our parents pass us on to us, or our family passes on to us in terms of value system. So I think the number one rule slash mindset that helped me was a form of inner strength that has been given to me by my family. And it's a mindset that says we don't give up when it's hard, right? So, and again, as simplistic as it sounds, it is just that fighting spirit. That is what it is. I could only do it because I had the support of the family near me and dear to me, and encouraging me, and seeing their own fighting spirit and their own ability to overcome the challenges that they were facing because of what I was going through. As you can imagine, it's not easy for the family to see that. So that fighting spirit was definitely one mindset that I kept going back to. And I have a quick story I'll share with you there, which basically happened for me on the first day of my chemotherapy as I was walking to the hospital, because this was in Manhattan and really close to the hospital. We lived close by. There was a church, and I just stopped by the church. And I'm not of the Christian faith, but I go to all forms of faith. And I just made a promise sitting in that empty church. I remember sitting down there and just making a promise to whatever the powers above may be that I'm not giving up. I've been given a 50-50 chance to live, and I am going to make it on the side of 50% gonna live. But I think that promise, which was that fighting spirit, gave me that anchor, gave me something to always go back to and hold on to when it got difficult in the, the many moments afterwards for months and months of chemotherapy. So that was definitely one mindset. I think the other one was a tool that I have continued to use until today. And I mean, of course, the fighting spirit is something much more within, but this tool is something I actively practice, and I have to work hard at it, but it has really, really helped me. And that is to recognize, be aware, and cut off negative energy when it arises in your life. What that means is that you kind of have to become relentlessly positive, sometimes foolishly so, and that's okay, because that is your savior in that moment. Because you're not doing it stupidly, you're doing it with the awareness that, okay, I'm doing this in an extreme way because right now I really, really need that. And in time, I will balance the way that I react to this. But right now, I'm just choosing to be positive, and that I need to do for myself. So, yeah, I think this relentless positiveness of things will work out, if something wrong is going on, I'm sure there's something positive that is going to come out of it, along with the fighting spirit. These are the two tools that have been helping me the most. And I certainly hope will be something I pass down to my kids and the people around me and my clients, that, it is not the end of the line. There are many things that you can do psychologically to be able to train yourself. And this is something I truly believe in, that you can train yourself. You can train your brain to learn these things, even if you may feel like you're not wired because you were not conditioned to do so. But yes, I think those would be the two tools I would highlight the most.
Okay, amazing. And what's the most surprising thing that you've learned about the brain since you've started your PhD?
Oh my God, there are so many. Let's see. This probably the easiest one to talk about without getting into all sorts of jargon, but is easy for people to grasp because it is the truth, was all about neuroplasticity, actually. I was always under the impression that once you get old, you kind of get stuck in your old ways, memory fades, you don't get to learn as much, or you won't be able to learn as much. You should expect some form of neurodegeneration, no matter which way it arises. And then I started learning about research that has been happening in neuroplasticity, which enables people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s to have minds slash brains that are as young. And by that, I mean like as active, quick reaction, memory ability to be able to hold on to and regurgitate information, all forms of things, right? And even learning how to be relaxed and calm and all of that. Those are all skills that can be learned even in your late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And you can be better than a 20-year-old if you wanted, right? So if I look at the research that's been coming out of a few of the universities and really good universities in the US and in UK on neuroplasticity in particular, I think that's the one thing that I have absolutely been amazed by. And I always pass that information on to my clients on, look, the reason why we are the way we are today is because we have been conditioned. And that is a neural pathway that has become reinforced over time because we have constantly been using it. And when you use it, you strengthen that connection. However, that's not the only way. There is another way. And the other way needs to be first learned, in the sense you need to be aware that there is another way. You have to accept it and be like, okay, I'm going to try this, and then practice it and practice it and practice it and practice it so that the old neural connections can disengage and you can get new ones that get formed and get reinforced over time. And I think that is what I have seen in my practice with the clients that are really focused and committed to practicing another way, whatever that may be, for whatever they are suffering from. You can see crazy results that come about super fast, actually. But then with the clients who are not as committed, um, and that can be for whatever reasons that happen in their life to them, progress happens, but it's slower. Yeah, I think to me in this journey, not just at the PhD, but even as I practice my brain coaching with people, it's been really crazy to see, okay, this knowledge exists about neuroplasticity, but then, hey, you can, when you actually practice it, apply it, it's true, it works.
And are there specific practices that you would recommend our listeners pursue in order to optimize neuroplasticity, but also to prevent any risk of cognitive decline in the future?
I mean, look, that you're basically asking me what matters for brain health. And I would say, I mean, there are several different pillars that underscore that. And for sure, it isn't a singular thing to just help. Like, it's not just one thing that you can do to help your brain. It is a combination of different lifestyle factors that need to come together to be able to help you. And you may be good in some and you may not be so great in some. So, as when I would start an engagement with a client, this is how I would begin. I would begin by looking at lifestyle. What are the lifestyle factors? So, what does that mean? It means first and foremost, number one, sleep, right? What is your sleep looking like on a daily basis over a period of time? Is it good amount of sleep? Is it good quality sleep? What is the sleep architecture? And these are the things that are often less known. We typically think, oh, I'm getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep. I'm good. That's good enough. It is, it's a good start, but the way that your sleep breaks down while you're sleeping, the number of cycles that you have, therefore your sleep architecture makes a big difference. So that's one. The other one obviously is nutrition, and there are specific things to be able to help your brain, especially in terms of good fats, non-processed foods, the usual stuff that is also good for your body, but maybe a few specific things for your brain that we could focus on. But that typically tends to be a little less of an issue for people. Most people, at least clients that I have, tend to have generally a healthy diet because there's a lot more awareness of that. But that's the second pillar, nutrition. That really matters as well. Third is your exercise. And the amount of exercise that is generally considered good is about 3 to 4 times a week of good aerobic activity, something that gets your heart rate up in that zone 2 area and gets you pushing. That's, again, usually something people do. I mean, it depends on the age group of my clients, but some of them can be a little bit more senior, some are younger, so they do more aerobic activity. So it's a matter of kind of tweaking that. But it's really important to understand that aerobic activity is really important for your brain too. It's not just about like looking good and being fit. And so that's a key consideration as well. The fourth one, and probably the most important one after sleep for me, and is intricately linked to sleep as well, as stress, right? And this is something I have certainly learned to manage for my own self because, given everything that has been happening and over the past 10, 15 years, I've had to develop tools for that. So the number one tool I tell people is you cannot change, first of all, you cannot change any of this without self-awareness. So you have to develop some form of self-awareness, and you can go get help for that, enable that for you. But you need to know what happens to your body when you are in a stressed environment. You need to understand what's happening in my brain when I have anxiety, I have depression, I have stress, high stress, what's really going on. And then you need to know the tools to be able to help you with that. So whether that is some form of mindfulness, which, has all forms of definition for people, but in essence, it's just about being present in the moment, and accepting, letting go of whatever may be. That's a very, very easy thing to say and a very, very hard thing to do. But again, it takes practice. It is just a neural pathway that needs to be reinforced again and again. So I certainly try to do that, but I think helping stress with breath work, helping stress with movement, helping stress with visualization exercises, helping with some form of like music or guided meditation can be super useful. And that's something I see a lot of people benefit from because they usually are not exposed to it. And again, this is not religious, this is purely spiritual. So that's another pillar. The fifth pillar, I would say, is spirituality. And again, spiritual, not religious, but believing in a larger power that exists out there and being able to relinquish control to that power, knowing that that power is there for you, looks out for you, and just letting go, again, relinquishing control to that power is deeply strength giving for a lot of people. And I've seen this again and again with people who are cancer survivors or cancer patients, stroke survivors or stroke patients. Everyone ultimately needs some anchor to go to, right? So it's going back to that story I was telling you of sitting in that church and making a promise to whatever that higher power out there was. But that was my anchor, something to go back to. And when I speak to friends and family or acquaintances that ask me about my cancer journey, I usually say, find that anchor, whatever it is for you. It could be in any form, right? Whatever gives you that spiritual power and presence, use that as something to go back to. So I think that is sort of my fifth pillar, spirituality. And last but not least is social connections. They matter humongously. People that you bond with, people that you trust, that are close to you. These sort of interactions release all kinds of neurochemicals and neurotransmitters in our brain and in our body, which allow us to be calmer, which allow us to be healthier. They kick in the parasympathetic nervous system, which allows you to rest and digest. These are all things that people don't necessarily know about on an everyday basis. But as a brain coach, I have the privilege and the pleasure to be able to teach them about it. Look, again, that sounds like a lot, 6 big things, right? Again, they're all lifestyle things. So it takes time to A, be aware of it, but also B, apply those principles in your life. But I think when I know I am stressed out, like right now, I'm going through a very high stress period, as I was telling you, I'm cognizant of that. So I know I have to focus on my diet. I have to focus on my exercise. No matter what, I've got to make time for that. I've got to make time to do my mindfulness / meditation throughout the day if I can. And I see that those tools are really helping me. So yeah, that's what I would say are the key things that are important for people to know when it comes to brain health. And from a PhD perspective, that's certainly been very eye-opening.
I fully agree with everything you've shared, and I've been doing so much research on the brain as well over the many years, and it's just fascinating as you've just described. So I was curious if beyond the 6 dimensions that you shared, what role do you believe purpose plays in really helping us live more joyfully?
It actually goes into that sixth, the fifth dimension we spoke about, which is spirituality, because I think purpose is very spiritual. It is your anchor and your meaning of what you feel like you are here for, right? And that's definitely been the sense for me in the last couple of years, where I feel like I finally found that meaning in my life. The reason why I don't necessarily always use purpose is I think it's wonderful to be able to have it, but we put a lot of pressure in society around this purpose. Go find your purpose. Go find. And I think it's a very evolving thing. My purpose has changed so many times in my life, right? And so the one thing I would say is purpose definitely is linked to joy, and joy is different from happiness in my mind. Joy is an inside being state, as opposed, and not something that you react to, but it's something that you constantly have, you embody inside of you, versus happiness, which would be a fleeting reactive sort of state of like, I'm happy now, I'm not happy later. Joy is something you hold on to. So I think purpose definitely feeds and fuels that joy, joy in your body. I think it also changes, and therefore the definitions of purpose change, and the way that it forms, it gives you joy, changes. So when I became a mother, new purpose for me in my life, a new form of joy that was constantly fed by having these little lives in my life, right? But then also finding this new path of a PhD and being a brain coach and working with clients and seeing clients benefit from what we do together. That's another form of joy. I think the definition needs to be broad. It needs to have space to allow for purpose to evolve. That's really important. And it's really important we don't stick onto one thing and just say, this is my purpose and therefore this is all I'm going to do. No, your purpose is multidimensional, and it also is evolving over time.
Can you share with us what technology tools you trust and that you've used with your clients to actually measure progress when it comes to sleep, stress, and just overall well-being?
There are actually several technologies that you can use even at home. It's just like a consumer device that you could use. Let me start with sleep. So I think for sleep, a lot of sleep tracking devices today are out there. You've got the Aura Ring, you've got your watches, there's a whole shebang of them. I think they're wonderful, great tools to have as someone that is new to this and is just looking to kind of understand, what does my sleep really look like? Am I getting enough? How restless I am, etc. Like all the metrics that they usually share. However, the only one caution I would say is that people tend to become a little too obsessed sometimes with their sleep data. And I've certainly had some clients who, wake up feeling so good, feeling so refreshed, and then they look at the tracker and go, I only slept 5.5 hours? No, I feel like I slept 8 hours. What is wrong? Did I not sleep well? Oh my God. And so then there's this whole stress that builds out of it and a conversation that comes out of it. So I always tell people it's just a tool. At the end of the day, how you feel, what your body tells you, what you sense is what really, really matters. Yes, you may have been a little bit more restless while you slept, but you literally woke up feeling quite refreshed. So listen to that. Let your body be the ultimate tool, right? That tells you what's really going on. But yes, sleep trackers, good for basic information. However, sleep trackers give you information that are only indirect, right? So they will tell you how still you have been, what your heart rate is. Some may be able to monitor whether you're in REM or not in REM, but those are all through indirect pieces of information like body temperature, etc. So take it with a pinch of salt is what I'm trying to say, right? But then there are sleep trackers that do actually read what's happening in your brain. And so one of the ones that I'm very fond of is called Muse. It is an EEG device, which is kind of like, think of an ECG for your heart, which reach waves of your heart and what the electrical impulses of your heart are, what's the electrical sort of signature of your heart. This reads the exact thing of your brain. And so it tells you whether you have been in deep sleep or not in deep sleep, in REM versus not REM. So you get a little bit more accurate information. Now, of course, you need to be able to know how to read that information and make sense of it to be able to benefit from it. And that's where a brain coach can also help. Typically, sleep tracking is useful for clients who are really struggling with deep sleep and are wondering whether it is actually happening or not because they have very light sleep and they're waking up multiple times at night. Otherwise, don't put a sleep tracker, just sleep. Don't stress about it, just sleep. So that's one category, I would say, since you specifically asked about it. The other one, which I really enjoy, is a form of an EEG device. It's another form of Muse device, which is basically put in the category of neurofeedback. So it gives you feedback on what really is happening inside of your brain in that moment when you close your eyes and you're sitting in mindfulness. And you can help yourself do training towards focus with that. You can help yourself do training towards a better HRV with that, or heart rate variability with that. You can do training to help yourself with various things like calmness, lower heart rate, whatever it might be. But because it is reading what's happening up here in your brain and primarily in your prefrontal cortex, which is the front of your brain, it's giving you it's giving you feedback through your earphones, telling you whether you are focused or you're not focused, whether you are calm or you're not calm, depending on what training track you're on. And I have found that really useful because it is quantitative in nature. And so it takes away the mystery from like, okay, if I'm meditating and I'm trying to focus on my breath, am I doing it right? Or has my mind deviated? And this gives me a little signal saying, you've deviated, come back, focus again on whatever your focus point was. For me, it's usually the breath. And those are devices that are available to buy off of, websites, and are available to consumers. There are devices that also help you with deep relaxation, like the Brain Tap device that has been developed by the world-renowned hypnotherapist, Dr. Patrick Porter. And they essentially have audio tracks that you're listening to, along with specific audio signals that are sent to your left and your right brain to enable you to get into a deep relaxation state. And then, as a hypnotherapist and a neuro-linguistic programmer himself, the words that he uses, the script that he uses to talk to you in that state, enables you to be more positive, to be more courageous, enables you to all sorts of things. You can choose what you want from it. It's a whole menu within the app. But I find that it really helps me also with sleep. So there are sleep tracks as well. And sometimes I just want to calm my mind down and shut it down and go to sleep. And I use that because it enables not just deep relaxation, but also gets rid of negative thinking if that's what you need at that point in time. So there are a whole host of tools that you can use that a consumer can buy. Or you can buy through a brain coach or a psychologist. A lot of them have access to these. But what I would say, if I were to zoom out of all of this, is again, these are just tools. At the end of the day, they're not the solution. The solution sits up here, right? So these can help train and nudge you in the right direction, but you have to have that commitment and you have to have that fortitude to say, this is the path I am on and I'm going to stick to it. And these tools will help me get there.
For someone that may be faced with a lot of anxiety as they're thinking about many of the world events that are happening on a daily basis, what advice would you give them to move from anxiety to a state of joy?
It's a good question, Andrea. I can only answer that from my own perspective on what I would use as a tool for myself. And it kind of follows, in some sense, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Strangely, I don't know why I feel like I need to say that, but honestly, it starts with you, not even yours, but you. So if you go inwards and find out the reasons why this might be giving you so much anxiety, or you know what may be the causes of it, and truly try to understand the why and the why and the why behind it, it'll all come back ultimately to you. It'll all come back to what your own issues, insecurities, worries, etc. might be, and where they stem from or where they come from. I think any counselor or any psychologist will tell you this. No matter what's bothering you, it always comes back to yourself, right? It always comes back to your thought patterns. And so just know that you don't need to live in those thought patterns. Those thought patterns are changeable. In fact, the biggest investment you can make in your own future are your thoughts. That's your biggest investment that you can make. So invest in them, invest in your thoughts. If you are feeling anxiety, be aware of it first and foremost. Try to understand it. And if you can't, go get help for it, right? And through that, you will go through your own self-discovery path and unveil what are the things that truly give you joy, unveil the things that truly matter to you, unveil what is truly priority for you. And that process will be nothing but joy giving, because when there's self-awareness, there is joy. There's just no doubt. It ultimately would lead to joy if done the right way.
Love it. And on these beautiful words, Mantazh, it's been an immense pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you immensely for everything you have shared. And I'm excited to continue reading all your upcoming research about the brain
Thank
and
you.
reconnecting again soon.
Thank you, Andrea. And you are such an inspiration. I'm so glad you exist. And thank you for doing what you do. And of course, for having me on this show. It's really been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you again.
Thank you. Likewise.